Crew evacuated. Station AI offline.
Air supply?
Breathable air on Tacoma for a crew of 1 should be more than sufficient. Docking now.
Nice. Thanks, Minnie.
Hey there, I'm Steve,
I'm Carla.
and we are the co-founders of Fulbright, and we want to welcome you to Tacoma's commentary mode.
Welcome.
Throughout the game, you'll find icons like this one that will give you insight from a bunch of different people that contributed to Tacoma. You know, people on the development team that did design, animation, sound, and pretty much every other part of making a game like this a reality.
It'll be both audio and sometimes visual.
Yeah.
So lots of information.
Behind the scenes concept art and other kind of development screenshots and stuff like that. And also on your way back out of this area, if you do a full playthrough of the game in commentary mode, there will be some new nodes that pop up in the hub and in Amy's ship. So don't miss those. Thank you for playing through commentary mode, and we hope that you'll enjoy finding out more about how Tacoma was made.
So doing the voice recording for Amy was definitely very different from what we did with Sam in Gone Home. A lot of it with Gone Home, since it is something that's very personal, it's very intimate, it's that one person pouring her thoughts out. And then you have something like Amy in Tacoma, where she's really removed from everybody else. She's, in a sense, really removed from the story that you're exploring, because she's playing that character that's discovering it just as you are. So, whereas the rest of the crew for Tacoma was all doing an ensemble recording together, so they were actually in the same room, acting together, performing against each other, and getting to talk face to face, all of my recording was done totally separately. I had a general idea of the story that kind of gave me a little rundown of, the scenes that I was in and what I was talking about, but a lot of it was a total surprise, because you sort of don't want Amy to know a lot of what's going on, because I think that it makes it a bit more authentic if the recording is, okay, so you walk into this room and this is what you're seeing, but you don't know why. So it needs to have that sound of surprise and questioning and exploration that I think comes from really being that separated as she would actually be in that reality.
Minnie, I'm headed in. Talk to you when I'm back. Don't let anybody scan the ship while I'm gone.
Okay.
Okay.
So Minnie is Amy's ship's AI. I think she's most known for saying, okay. And I am the voice of Minnie. When we originally recorded it, it was just Scratch. So we didn't know then that I would be the voice of Minnie, ultimately. But yeah, it stuck, and it was a nice surprise.
Yeah, Minnie went through like a bunch of iterations, actually. It was kind of hard to get her right. We ended up kind of settling on the audio direction being like a happy version of Hal, like the really famous AI from 2001. So yeah, I just kind of took Noelle's really amazing VO and I would do things like I would time stretch it, or I would take one syllable and like an okay, that line. I took the O and I, like over a period of time, I kind of pitch bent that vowel sound up. So she has a real like sing-song quality, and I think that combined just with like it sounding like her voice is coming through a really small speaker makes the character feel kind of rudimentary. And then it's all really Noelle's like voice acting that kind of sells Minnie as being super pleasant and helpful.
I just remember when we were recording it, Steve and Carla are just like, cheerier, be like you are when you come into the office or something. And I had no idea that I was quite that cheery all the time.
A lot of people ask about the use of sign language in Tacoma, including asking things like, is Amy hearing impaired? Is there, what is the rationale behind the use of sign language? And for us, it actually came from thinking about how an interface for a non-physical thing like AR might work.
Most of our AR interaction is, it's attention-based and it's focus-based, like on where the user is looking and paying attention to. But sometimes there are good reasons for you to do something, physically, and we use therefore sign language for things like signing in.
Or in the case of when Amy's recovering one of the AR crew records, she does, as opposed to like text entry, she does full word commands in ASL, American Sign Language.
And our animator, Noelle, also had extensive correspondence with a person fluent in ASL, so...
Yeah, it was important to us to work with a sign language consultant so that Noelle could ensure that the hand motions and the finger spelling that she was animating were accurate to how someone might actually use those gestures in the real world.
Hello, I am Odin, Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma's Operational Data Interface Network. I have recorded this message to welcome you, yes, aboard. Before I can set up your station profile, you must register your body positional data with Tacoma's AR tracking systems. Please place your hand on the AR figure's palm. Your body positional data has been registered with Tacoma's AR network. Please sign in to confirm your identity. Thank you. Welcome aboard. While aboard Tacoma Station, please remember that all activity on this facility is monitored by AR recording. All activity records become sole property of the Venturas Corporation. Any questions about privacy and personal privacy should be discussed on certain about
Here we are in the hub.
Yeah.
It's big.
It is very big. Actually, that was one of my concerns when we sort of first started making the hub, was that, like, you just sort of get thrown into this giant space. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. There's little guys flying around.
it's one of the only spaces in the entire game that feels very spaceship to me.
Yeah.
You go from here to a space that feels a lot more terrestrial, that feels a lot more grounded, and it's easy to get around, and you tend not to lose your bearings, and we help the player move through the space with, landmarking and lighting and stuff. And then you come back to here after that, and you're like, oh, I'm in space. Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Here I am in space
weird.
again. And it's disorienting, and it's weird, and it's kind of unsettling. I think that kind of works about it, because you're not playing the game in here, and the game isn't really about getting from A to B. So it's really kind of
playing basketball.
It's playing basketball, and it's also kind of, I always felt like this part was just kind of an intermission in the game. You come here to kind of take a breath after, a long bit of story, and it's a fairly empty, quiet float, which I really liked.
I remember because I made a bunch of signs to point us in the direction of the Tacoma Dome, and you guys just let me kind of go bananas. I remember because I made a bunch of signs to point us in the direction of the Tacoma Dome, and you guys just let me kind of go bananas. You didn't say anything particular. You said make a bunch of signs, and I just made them say a bunch of stuff like, those mystery spots? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, they have those where you are? Yeah. You'll drive, and they'll be like, two more turns till wall drug or to your mystery spot or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I wanted them to have that tone, and I thought for sure you guys would be like, no, more serious, but you're like, no, great.
No, they were great.
Yeah.
We loved them.
I think those kinds of things, what we really wanted to do with a lot of Tacoma was say that the station is very manufactured. It's a little antiseptic as a base layer, but then the characters kind of humanizing that and expressing their personalities on top of it is what a lot of what you find is about. So the signs being kind of the crew having fun and making jokes for their own amusement, I think is totally appropriate here.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how it started, but I feel like the team colors, and specifically the design of the basketball backboard, were definitely left up to you. So yes. I want to know about these backboards because I absolutely love them.
We needed ones that were basically sort of symmetrical, that you could approach a basketball hoop from both up and down. Mm-hmm. So this is just the most obvious approach to it, but it works, right? And if something works in a video game where you're flying around in 0G, then maybe stick with that. Don't make it convoluted. Don't make it any more than it needs to be.
I also tested this so much that I could make a 3-pointer from, the other side of the hub, which I don't think it's a skill I can do something else with, but I'm still kind of proud about it.
Yeah, well, I can't shoot for beans, so I'm glad someone can.
So, you really miss it, huh? Well, it just seems like it'd be...
So, with zero-G controls, you are a little floating ball in space, is that accurate?
Yeah. You're generally a cylinder walking around, but when you're floating around, you're a sphere, so you don't bump your feet or head into things when you wouldn't expect to. In theory, your feet are floating out behind you and not getting in the way.
So you're not a long tube?
No, you're just a sphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be even worse to program.
I believe it. Because you're a perfect ball, and because you're a pretty small ball, you can actually dunk yourself through the basket.
You don't get points for that, though.
No points.
No points. That should be a Chivo.
Yeah, we missed it somehow. Just skulls.
That's amazing.
All right, so the advertisements you see in the transfer shaft are advertising the Ventura Spelt vacation homes, and I got to illustrate them. They're really fun. I'm usually doing animation and stuff, so this is kind of like a fun little task.
Oh yeah, yeah. So when I was working on Tacoma, like at sort of in my free time, I would just like record a bunch of music, and Steve, the idea for the transfer ad kind of came online, and Steve was like, "Oh, we need like a jingle for this," and I was like, "Oh man!" I thought to myself, I wrote a really like obnoxious, like corporate Muzaki sounding thing like 3 days ago. This will be perfect. So I like rearranged some things, and I was like, I think this is terrible enough to be elevator music, and tell the story of like this corporation sort of, you know, licensing this terrible song to put in this elevator and make people listen to. And so I think it was pretty effective, but I just love how humble Noelle's being, because like Noelle did animation on the game, but also she's a really amazing illustrator, and like does that on the regular. So I just feel like I have to kind of shout her out as being a really amazing illustrator, and she's just being super humble.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah.
Typically, Steve, who's the main writer, will send me a description of technical requirements for any given sort of game object, any thoughts he has about like the basic look of it. And in this case, the sync device had to feel like this, like sort of like a heavy-duty industrial object. Like he mentioned when he was talking to me initially about like early beige Apple products, kind of like the Apple II. And it couldn't have any buttons, as you will know, because the moment there's a button is the moment you as a player, you want to press that button, right? And so if we can't pay off a button, generally we don't put a button in, or we steer away from it. So that's why you won't find many or any buttons in Tacoma Station.
So there's actually a whole bunch of physically made paper items in Tacoma that our characters made, and in order to make those assets, Kate and I pretty much always actually made those paper objects and scanned them and whatnot to put them in.
As opposed to typing it out in Photoshop.
Yeah. I guess we carried that over from Gone Home, just kind of making things physically on paper, because it really does look a lot different.
It does, yeah. And actually, there's a little bloody handprint in the drone bay, and I spent a lot of time just like getting my hands covered in ink and then just smacking them all around pieces of paper.
It's extremely
and doing like
good.
little blood spheres and stuff. I feel like now I pass this rite of passage because I put a bloody handprint in a video game.
So there's actually a whole bunch of physically made paper items in Tacoma that our characters made, and in order to make those assets, Kate and I pretty much always actually made those paper objects and scanned them and whatnot to put them in.
As opposed to typing it out in Photoshop.
Yeah. I guess we carried that over from Gone Home, just kind of making things physically on paper, because it really does look a lot different.
It does, yeah. And actually, there's a little bloody handprint in the drone bay, and I spent a lot of time just like getting my hands covered in ink and then just smacking them all around pieces of paper.
It's extremely
and doing like
good.
little blood spheres and stuff. I feel like now I pass this rite of passage because I put a bloody handprint in a video game.
Yearly report to Ventura's Corporation.
Glitch text was initially a way for us to make our text more approachable. We wanted to have the appearance of a full page of information, but not make you have to literally read the entire page, and retain everything. So we were like, what's a good way for us to give you basically islands of ideas to grab onto so that you, don't have to process an entire page.
But also, like Carla was saying, we had this problem conceptually, which is like if you open, for instance, a web page in an AR desktop in our fiction, why isn't it just the entire thing that you can read? We didn't want to have to put all of that in front of the player, and so being able to say, like, a lot of what our games are about is only having access to little bits and pieces of information, and then you have to fill in the gaps as to what the entire meaning is. And so glitch text for us is hopefully the text version of saying, well, I only have like this sentence and this paragraph and this little snippet, but I'm involved in interpreting this as the player by saying, oh, and here's what must have been between them, or what the whole message is, without just you read all the way through it and
Right.
There it is.